Hey guys, today we're going to focus on loving God with our heart. And the topic that we're going to talk about is handling confrontation. I don't know about you, but for me, when I think of confrontation, oftentimes the things that come to mind are harsh words and hurt feelings and broken relationships, and just it doesn't carry a very positive feeling in me. And maybe you are feeling the same way, that when it comes to confrontation you haven't had a whole lot of positive experiences. And also, when I look at scripture, I see all these places where the scriptures are telling us to be people of peace, right? Jesus, when he gave the Sermon on the Mount, he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And later in that same sermon, he said that we are to go and make peace with our brother before we go worship the Lord. Paul, when he addresses the church in Rome, he says to live peaceably with all. He also says that we are supposed to pursue the things that make for peace and lifting others up. When he talks to the church at Thessalonica, he says to be at peace amongst yourselves. James even says that peace is supposed to be something that we intentionally sow in the lives of others. So when I think of peace, I don't usually think of confrontation. In fact, for a long time, I would avoid confrontation because I thought it was better to live at peace than to ever have confrontation. But guys, when we look at the life of Jesus, he was the Prince of Peace. He brought peace wherever he went. But he also confronted people. And so how do we do this in a way that Jesus did? We see Jesus confront his disciples on different issues. We see him confronting the woman at the well. And so while I think from a human standpoint, it's easy to think of peace and confrontation as being opposing things, the truth is that godly confrontation can actually bring about peace. So how do we start? Because let's face it, even our closest, best friends, the best relationships that we have, at some point or another, there's the potential for me to say something or for them to say something that's going to be hurtful. Things can happen, and confrontation might be necessary in order to maintain peace and unity in that relationship. So what kinds of instructions have scriptures given us? Well, we're going to start off in Matthew chapter 5. I mentioned it earlier that Jesus talks about this when it comes to what do I do when I know that I have offended someone else. I have offended a friend of mine. And this is what he says in chapter 5, starting in verse 23. So if you are offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar and first go be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So he's talking about, like, this is serious, guys. If you know that you've hurt someone and you come to worship God and you're kind of acting like everything's fine, God's saying, no, you need to go make things right with your brother and then come worship me. He connects our relationship with others to our relationship with God. It's a big deal. And what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to go to them. So how do I go to them in a way that promotes peace? I think there's 3 things that we need to do. The first thing, when we go to someone because we know we've hurt them, we just need to own our part. So many times we want to make excuses for why we did what we did, right? There might be a place to explain what your thought process was, but what's most important is that you just own it. I hurt you and I didn't mean to. Please forgive me. The second thing we need to be careful of when we go to someone to reconcile with them because we have hurt them, we need to make sure we're not using that as a platform to really point out what they've done wrong, right? It's possible, and oftentimes in a situation where there's been a disagreement or something has happened, it's possible that your friend has even done things that may have hurt you. But if you're going to them to reconcile, it's not your job to point out the things that they did wrong. And that sometimes is what we'll do. I did this because you did that. Okay, so that's not really owning your part, and we're not supposed to use our asking for forgiveness as an opportunity to point out someone else's flaws. That's something that God has to work on in their heart. So go own your stuff and don't use it as an opportunity to point out what they've done wrong, but ask for forgiveness. It's really easy to say, I'm sorry. But that is different than saying, please forgive me. I'm sorry is a statement of fact, like I feel badly, but that is not giving the other person the opportunity to say, I forgive you. What you need to do, it's scarier to say, will you forgive me? Because it puts the ball in their court when it comes to reconciliation. But this is what we should do when we know that we have offended others. So how are we to be peacemakers when we're the ones that have been offended? Well, I think there are two plays that Scripture talks about us making. And I think the first one is one that we can find in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 11. This is what it says. A person's insight gives him patience, and his virtue is to overlook an offense. So I think what Proverbs is saying here is that if we are able to look at the situation and go, okay, that was hurtful, but I know you, I know your heart, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, I'm gonna forgive you anyway. I'm gonna overlook this offense. I think Proverbs is commending us for doing that, for showing patience in this moment. Now, overlooking and denying and avoiding are not the same thing, right? To overlook an offense is to acknowledge, I've been hurt and I'm choosing to forgive. Denying and avoiding has a tendency, have the tendency of, oh, it didn't really bother me, right? No, that's not what we're talking about here. It is to say, yeah, I've been hurt, but I'm going to choose to walk in forgiveness. So that's our first play, is to overlook an offense if we can. Now, if we've been hurt and it was just really deep and it's just impacting, like it's just really hard for you to continue having a relationship with someone, like this is kind of a wedge now and it's just not going away and you're just really struggling with it. Well, in that situation, it's time to go to the person that's offended us. Well, how do we do that? I think Ephesians gives us a really good starting point that we need to consider when we go to someone who's hurt us. In chapter 4 of Ephesians, verse 15, it says, but speaking the truth in love, let us grow in every way into him who is the head. So there is a way that we are to go to our brother, right? A way that's going to cause him to grow and cause me to grow. How is that? Speaking the truth in love, right? I'm honest about what's happened, but I do it in a loving way. I don't come with all my ammunition and a firing squad. I don't come yelling and, just accusing, and that's not how we're supposed to do this. We're supposed to speak the truth in love. So that means we probably need to wait until we can calm down a little bit so that we can have a conversation that is productive. So how do I know when I'm ready to go to the friend who's hurt me? Well, Jesus gives us a really good guideline, actually, again, in the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 7, this is in the context, Jesus is talking about judging others. This is what he says in chapter 7, verse 5. He says, first, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. It's really easy when we've been hurt to become judgmental of the person that's hurt us. And we just want to go and point out the speck that's in their eye that they need to fix because they've hurt us. Jesus says, before you even go to your brother, he doesn't say there's never a time to take the speck out of your brother's eye. You can go do that, but there's something you have to do first. There's a log in your own eye that you have to deal with. So there's times when if I've been hurt, I need to take some time and ask God to show me, have I contributed to the situation? Is there a log in my eye? Is there something that I need to fix before I go to my brother? Is there something that I've done wrong that I can't see because all I'm looking at is the speck in his eye? And I need to do some heart work with God before I go to my brother and talk to him about how he's offended me. So, if you can overlook the offense, that would be your first option. But if you just can't, it's caused a wedge, you need to spend some time, I need to spend some time praying, getting right with God, looking at my own heart and my own actions before I go to my brother so that I can speak the truth in love. But let's be honest, even when we know, right, we know we need to go to a friend, it doesn't make it any easier. It is hard to have to go to a friend and talk about an offense. On either side of it, it's really difficult. How can we do it in a way that will promote peace, right? Because godly confrontation is supposed to promote peace. So here are a few tips that you can keep in mind as you go to your friend and try to reconcile with them. The first thing that you can do is to stick to the issue at hand. Sometimes it can be really tempting to bring up all kinds of other things that have happened in the past that you feel like are other examples of this particular issue. You're not going to them to be a firing squad, right? So stick to the issue at hand. Another thing that's going to be really important as you go to your friend is to have a pure heart. So, when you did business with God and asked God if there was a log in your eye that you needed to deal with, was there anything that you did to contribute to the problem? Make sure when you go to your friend, if there is something God showed you, that you own that you go to them and you say, you know what? This wasn't just you. I contribute to this as well, and ask for forgiveness for your part. A third thing to keep in mind is to affirm the relationship. The whole reason we're supposed to go to our friend is because that relationship is important to us, and we want things to be made better. We want there to not be anything getting in the way of that friendship, right? Because we value it. And so tell your friend that you value them enough to come and talk to them about this because you want your relationship to be better. So another thing that you need to keep in mind is to listen carefully. So after your friend is giving you time to share what you feel like you need to say and what has offended you, make sure you take time to listen to their perspective, because that might bring information to the table that you've never even considered and help bring understanding to maybe what was behind some of your friend's actions. So be a really good listener. Obviously, there's going to be a place where forgiveness needs to happen if reconciliation is going to really happen, right? If confrontation is going to end in peace, there has to be forgiveness. A couple things about forgiveness. One, when we choose to forgive, we are saying that we're not going to bring this up again, right? We are releasing them from the offense, and we're not going to keep bringing it up. We're also not going to harbor it in our hearts. We're not going to mull this over and over in our hearts when they're not around. We are going to walk the path of forgiveness. And if that means we need to forgive again, that's what we do. We also are not going to talk about it to other people, right? So if we've forgiven them, we don't need to talk to mutual friends about the situation. We just need to let it go. And the last thing, we're not going to let it get in the way or hinder the relationship moving forward. That is how we sow peace in the relationship, is to truly forgive and let it go. So the last thing that would probably be really helpful as you guys move forward is to propose a solution. What will you do differently? What will that person do differently in the future so that you don't end up in the same situation where you are offended again? Guys, godly confrontation isn't easy. It is something that takes commitment and a lot of effort, but it is always worth it. Going back to our original verse, that we are to love God with our heart, right? From Matthew. This is part of the heart work that God does in us as we learn how to sow peace in people's lives by confronting in a godly way. And it really connects us to the second part of Jesus' command. I'm going to read it one last time. He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the greatest and most important commandment. And the second one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." My prayer for you guys is that you will love each other well and that you won't avoid the hard work of godly confrontation. Have a great day.